It's time for Quick Calls with Mike the Ref on the Edmonton Sports Podcast Network.
All right, folks, it's Mike the Ref here on location in Red Deer. I had to convince our special guest for this episode. I had to take him out for a milkshake here. So, and after he heard how I complained about how he says elite, dealing with the CWE Nightmare on Elite Street tour, he said he had to be a part of this, but he had conditions, and this was one of them. So, I want to welcome T. James Logan to the podcast.
The word just escapes me so much. I always say elite. I don't know why. It'll drive me insane.
Well, I'll definitely tell you, tonight's card was not light on talent. It was a very impressive show at the Springbrook Multiplex with the Nightmare on Elite Street tour with Canadian Wrestling Elite.
It was a spectacle, and I really wish more fans would come out to see this, because this was some really quality wrestling, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself tonight, Mike.
Absolutely, so did I. And just a reminder, folks, that this was a taping for Gutbuster TV. What we can use. Apparently, we can't use a lot of the ROH stuff. So, well, we'll see what we can do, and he'll see what he can do. What am I saying here? But let's get into these matches here, because there were definitely some great ones here. Do you want to talk about some high intensity to start off? We had I think they touted this as a suicidal six-way match for the CWE Unified Junior Heavyweight title. You had Tasty Travis, Cute Cody, known as the Blontourage as a team. I don't write this stuff, folks. It's theirs. The CWE Tag Team Champions, Phil Atlas and Shane Saber, as well as Alex Anthony, all challenging Tornado Tony Kozina for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Now, this was a very high energy, high intense match. Guys going left and right all over the place. In the end, Tornado Tony Kozina gets on the top rope, hits a cross body on Tasty Travis for the 1-2-3. Legend, what did you think of the match?
Well, you know what? This was a very weird dynamic for a six-man singles match, in the fact you had two tag teams, the tag team champions, participating against another tag team in there that have been doing their best to get under the tag team champion's skin. Most times I would think Tony Kozina would be walking in at a disadvantage, but those four guys kind of negated each other, attacking each other constantly. Alex Anthony spent a lot of time on the outside of the ring, same as Tony Kozina, just sort of watching them other guys beat on each other. But it's interesting to note they have a match at the end of this tour, I believe wraps up with them one-on-one, and the skinny around is Alex Anthony, while being a good wrestler, fails to win the big ones a lot. So Tony Kozina, once again, might have the advantage. But this was a crazy match, lots of crazy moves. And Blontourage, as silly as their name is, they really showed me a lot tonight. Cute Cody had a lot of unique moves.
Well, and Cody Lane, we talked about him numerous times on previous tours and how he actually surprised us. And let's face it, he's not surprising us anymore with the athleticism that he shows in the ring. And then, of course, Tasty Travis, a.k.a. Travis Cole, Alberta veteran. And
San Francisco now. Now he's building San Francisco.
Yeah, well, former Calgarian, I do believe, but fantastic match with all six of these guys. And folks, if you get to see any of these guys wrestle, it's definitely worth the price of admission. But speaking of that, we go on to a tag team match that I don't know if you knew a lot about a lot of the people in this matchup. Of course, you know a lot about Danny Duggan. I think that suffice it to say, Danny Duggan is well synonymous with Canadian wrestling. Teaming up with Garrison Creed, who has been around for numerous tours here through different companies, taking on the team of Bad Weather, K-Dos, and Killer Kaz Carter. Now, K-Dos has been up here a couple times, but Killer Kaz hasn't. Fantastic match back and forth. Like we were saying, Garrison has really improved in this match. Showed a lot. In the end, it was what he calls the Freedom Frog Splash on top of K-Dos, and when Duggan got the cover for the 1-2-3. Mr. Logan, your thoughts?
Well, you know what? First of all, I do know that Garrison was telling me he's changing his name. He's going to be referring himself mostly as the Mercenary. So he asked me to drop the Mercenary as much as I could without his name. He's been really vastly improving each tour I see him coming through. I really enjoy what he brings to the table. He brings a different look and a different style. Danny's gold. How is this guy not in the WWE? He has the look, he has the size, and I think he has the talent. He should be showing up on NXT. Kados, well, I've dealt with him many times in the last little while, and as much as I love hanging out with that guy, he is off his rocker insane. You never know what she's going to say. You never know what he's going to do. And it kind of reflects in his styling of wrestling. You never know what he's going to do when he comes off the ropes. I've never seen somebody break up the momentum of flying into the ropes by doing that little bounce to the corner into the thing to slow his momentum. I've never seen anyone even do that before. Crazy. You probably can't even describe it. It's so crazy. As for Killer Kaz, I thought it was Killer
Kaz Carter.
This guy, okay, he came out. Here's this big, humongous black guy dressing like a gangster. I didn't know what to expect. But then he pulls off a leg drop off the top, like from the middle rope. He bounces off, jumps down, does a bit of a corkscrew, comes down with it. Wow.
Basically a tumbleweed leg drop in many senses.
And it was a great match. Not going in and not knowing enough about some of these guys, I may have been like, whatever, throwaway match. But very fun, lots of skill. Kados always delivers, and so does Duggan, and just really good stuff.
Two newer guys to the tour with two veterans, and they belong with the veterans in the ring there, without a doubt. Now, our third match of the evening, essentially, folks, if you guys listened to our quick calls from yesterday, this is the match that sold me on the trip down to Springbrook for this show. Jordan Grace, Kelly Klein. These two had a knockout, drag-out, unbelievable match in St. Albert the night before, with Klein getting an incredible victory with a high knee, followed by a snap German. Now, tonight was a little different story. Same great action with these wrestlers, but in the end, Jordan Grace ends up getting a handful of tights on a roll-up and gets the 1-2-3. Now, this is your first time watching these two go one-on-one in action here. Legend, what did you think of the matchup?
Except for in the middle, there was a few miscommunications, which led to a little bit of confusion and a few moves in the middle of the match. And it was very clear at the end of the match, these girls had worked so hard, they were starting to tire out. And one of them was going to get the win soon because it was getting to the point where one of them was going to pull off a move that would totally stun the other. Surprised that it was a roll-up with tights.
Speaking of which, I have to say this. Speaking of stunning and stunned about stuff, the stunner from Jordan Grace on Kelly Klein, I swear, Stone Cold would be truly proud of it. Mm-hmm. The ending of this match was similar to what happened in St. Albert, except for the fact that Jordan actually scouted the knee of Kelly Klein. So following the snap German, she went for the knee, got it blocked, and then got shoved into the referee, and then coming back out was that roll-up. So,
well, you know what? There's two things that are, I guess, one very important thing to note. People, the transition from what people look like on television to real life, I gotta say, I expected, from all I've seen of Kelly Klein, I expected a very large, tall, imposing girl, because that's how she looks on ROH television, very stern and very plain looking. Instead, she's a very slight, very attractive lady, and Jordan Grace was actually smaller than she appeared on the thing, because it was the other way. All the films I've seen of her, she looks so imposing, and she's such a small lady, but powerful, very powerful. Love them. Love Jordan Grace. Total sweetheart. Talked to her beforehand. She totally won me over. But then I started talking to Kelly Klein, and it was really hard for me to decide who I was going to go behind, because both of those ladies were just total sweethearts and great competitors in the ring. This is one of the best women's matches I've seen in a while.
Now, simply put, we're both fans of women's wrestling here. Mm-hmm. We've seen the Kat Von Heeses, the Giselle Shaws, the Rachel Ellrings come through here. The Bambi Halls.
The Bambi Hall. I can't forget Bambi Hall.
And so many others. I can't I'm not going to be able to do service if I try and name them all. This match here brought me back to the days where we had a solid women's division of wrestling in Alberta here, and I know we're starting to grow it a little bit in MPW. I hope that it gets to the levels where matches like this can occur night after night after night.
Well, the quality of this match, Mike, reminded me of the first time I seen Portia Perez fight in Calgary, and that's what drew me in to watch women's wrestling and start taking it seriously. The excitement and the pure athleticism that I saw in that match was just the same as I saw in this match. And I got to tell you, there was no point in that match where I was just like, oh, look at these chicks, or anything like that. I love the fact that we're embracing women's wrestling, not divas. I don't need to see fake busted, overly done makeup skinny models hitting each other with their wrists. That's garbage, and I'm glad I got to see two ladies who really wrestled, and at the same time were incredibly attractive in their own way, women. I mean, it was great, and that's what women's wrestling, I think, is becoming more and more.
And trust me, folks, if you're getting out to these shows, go up and talk to them. They're very personable with everyone.
Kelly Klein may play the mean girl on TV, or the unapproachable girl, or the gatekeeper, or the imposing figure, but in real life, she is totally nice. Go take a chance to talk with her.
All right, we could keep gushing about this match for like an hour here, but we want to get out of here sometime tonight. From there, we went on to the CWE Championship match. Now, this match actually had to get rescheduled. I believe this is going on later on in the tour, but due to some cancellations, and I'll leave that there at that. But we had Jacob Creed come out and challenge for the CWE Championship. Coming out to essentially defend the title was the Russian Nightmare Nikita Koloff originally. But then he announced that, originally Jacob Creed announced that there was tire trouble or whatnot. I personally think that he tried to slice the brake lines in Colton's vehicle coming up here from Edmonton. But in the end, Tyler Colton does come out, and they have what I would consider one hell of a match. And I'm just glad I got the privilege of calling this match here with you. Before I give my thoughts, what are your thoughts here, T. James?
Well, you know what? Tyler Colton, I have not seen him in at least 3 years. And what a dramatic change in the physicality of this man. I remember him being a tall, slightly a little bigger, but not really that imposing, he was a good wrestler, and what I saw today was a great wrestler. Very powerful. He lives the gimmick, because it's not a gimmick. He is definitely a strong man. He competes in these competitions. He was pretty good in there tonight. And Jacob Creed is another guy. Now, I talked to him, and he told me this is his 4th year of wrestling. And, he said the thing is, he's been working with better companies, better wrestlers, and it's showing. I mean, I can remember from 2 years ago seeing him as a big, tall, rough housing type guy. Very much more polished now. And even just his look is much more polished. But his wrestling, right up there in par. And today we got to see two men, extremely heavy hitters, extremely strong, going against each other. That's kind of exciting to see that head-on match like that. And I got to say, it was pretty cool to see the champion really show his stuff.
Absolutely, and I was thoroughly impressed with Tyler Colton last night when he took on the Orion, and now tonight taking on Jacob Creed with no notice. Basically, this was just thrown together here at the last moment. The Atom Bomb from Tyler Colton, that is an absolute deadly move. For those that don't know, it's more of a sunset flip into a pickup sit-out power bomb. It's a great way to end the match, but the amount of punishment that Colton took in this matchup, he was taking everything that Jacob Creed could throw out at him, including 2 shots with a cowbell. Every match needs more cowbell, we know that, but it still wouldn't keep him down. And in the end, you had the victory here by Tyler Colton, and he retains his CWE championship. Following the match, you had Creed once again attack Colton with the cowbell when all of a sudden Nikita Koloff gets in the ring. And folks, if you have not seen Nikita Koloff lately, he is still jacked, and he looks like he could still go. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you know what? They always say never meet your heroes. They'll always let you down. Over the years, I've met many wrestlers who, as a young boy, were my heroes, or guys I looked up to, and then to see them in an old, broken state is kind of disheartening, and I'm not going to name any because I don't want to put down anybody. But Nikita Koloff was a guy, when I was young, was one of the first impressionable wrestlers to me when I was about 15. And to see him and talk to him, I mean, he's even just as incredible as I could possibly have imagined. I had a chance to sit down and do a 10-minute interview with him, and such a compassionate man, and the story, and I knew some of the story from back in the day, but to hear it and to talk with the conviction of his stuff was, I got to tell you, Mike, I think only one other time in all the times I've interviewed anyone have I ever felt a bit teary-eyed, and I definitely felt it today, because him talking about his wife dying of cancer and staying with her to the end, really heart-wrenching stuff. And then to see with such a good attitude, and still, you're right, I mean, yeah, maybe he doesn't look like he could be the young man in his 20s, but he still looks like he could get in there and really wrestle, and it was really great to see that. And Jacob Creed tasted a sickle that I think he's going to remember for a little while, if he can remember any of the night.
If he wakes up. Now, little spoiler here, coming up probably in the next few weeks here, a special edition of This Month in Alberta Wrestling will be returning, and you have that interview with Nikita Koloff that we'll be having up on the network here.
You bet, and we'll try and throw in I know we have at least 10 minutes with Jordan Grace, and I'll see what else I managed to cull out of the show, and we'll put a bit together with that.
You're definitely not going to want to miss that, folks. But from there, we went on to, that was where intermission came in, and then coming out of intermission, we had Ethan Price, the King of Pong, taking on the giant Orion. Now, Orion proved how dominant he was, finishing off this match with a Stargazer chokeslam. But throughout the match, I was actually really impressed with the fire and the energy and the determination of Ethan Price. Legend, your thoughts on the match?
Well, you know what? I've seen Ethan Price a couple times, and usually he plays this really snotty, frat boy, annoying type thing, and you can't help but hate the guy. Tonight, he really dug down deep, and I saw a lot more out of him. I was really impressed with him taking it to the Orion, because this guy was really big. I'm going to have to say, though, as much as I enjoyed Ethan Price, this for me was the weakest match in the thing, and I think most of that solely falls on the shoulders of Orion. Well, I know he's young. I know he's just starting out, but he is not an effective big man yet. He still needs to work on that. A man as big as he is can be much more effective and much more... It's just seasoning. He needs a lot more training. And I found him to be, for a large man, he wrestled like a mid... And I don't mean like a fast jump off the top mid-carder, but like he wrestled like a guy who was just another guy.
I think it's just finding that inner monster in him, and I think he's going to do it. It's just time, folks. Like you don't be a former King of the Cage champion and not have that killer instinct. It's a little different to find it in a wrestling ring than it is to find it inside a steel cage. So
true enough. I mean, for me, an example is if you're almost 7 feet tall and you're going to chop someone, slap them as hard as you can, and the little 5'8", Ethan Price, who is the frat boy, responds with a slap 3 times harder than you, I'm thinking maybe you better work on your slapping technique, because you're not utilizing your strength. The times that he did attack Ethan full head-on, a lot of times Ethan managed to get out of it because it just wasn't as devastating as it could have been with a little more training. Ethan was fast. He kept sliding out of things. He kept taking advantage and then getting some killer hard moves. Like I said, though, he definitely has the look. He definitely has a great future, but I think he needs to... When a guy like the size of Ethan Price can give you that much trouble, if you want to be a monster, pal, you better monster up and work a little harder.
Fair enough. And well, let's move on from there and let's get to our main event. Mm-hmm. Now, this is going to be the exact opposite of what we were talking about here. We got Silas Young, who is on an ultimate roll right now. He's been facing guys like Jay Lethal in ROH, and speaking of ROH, on the other side you got Jonathan Gresham, and you got Silas Young teamed up with Kenji Bray, who's been at it for 12 years, I do believe. And on the other side, you have Kiyoyama.
I've had a very hard time with this name too. I'm not used to it yet.
With all due respect, my last name in Japan will probably get screwed up a million times as well, like I mentioned yesterday. I do apologize for...
Your last name is the Ref, though, isn't there?
Oh, trust me.
Wait, you're telling me your last name isn't the Ref? All these years I thought you were the Ref.
Okay, Mr. Logan. I digress at that point.
I gotta ask. No.
But the match itself. Now, we expected a decent match out of these guys, but my God, Jonathan Gresham absolutely floored me with his ability in the ring. I think there was one point there where he went from being in a wrist lock to on the ground and having the guy's arm hammer lock through his leg within, I believe we got 4 words in before he got it changed around.
We couldn't call the moves, they were happening too fast.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's called the American Octopus, and so smooth. That's the other thing. And when you have Kato as a partner, and we didn't know what to expect out of him. He's a young guy. He's out of the Pro Wrestling Noah dojo.
Well, you know what? There was that kind of... I wouldn't blame you if you looked at this card and went, okay, you got Silas on one side, you got Jonathan Gresham, they're the anchors, and then you got these 2 young guys who are going to be the fodder. That wasn't the case at all. And even Kenji, is that his name?
Kenji Bray, yeah.
Kenji Bray, this guy really surprised me. He did a lot of surprisingly great offense while also having to play defense quite a bit. He was in there a lot of the time, and he just wasn't a ragdoll. He really was a great part of his team. Silas Young, yeah, that guy is solid. Gresham, all over the place. You were afraid to put your hands out, your feet out. He was going to grab something. But let's talk about that young man from Noah. This guy, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I got to tell you, effective his power game is, and his drop kicks, spot on. He showed me 3 different kinds of drop kicks in 3 different situations where each one of them was just as beautiful as the last.
Well, and the one thing is about guys that come over here from Japan, they have to learn a different crowd set and a different move set, essentially, is what develops out of it. Now, that being said, he is really starting to pick up on it very well. I will say this. I honestly thought that Gresham had it after he ate a TKO from Silas and a double foot stomp from Bray. Still kicked out at 2. Now, in the end, you had a reverse DDT by Kato onto Kenji, followed by... I literally dropped my jaw when I saw it, folks. This has to be one of the most beautiful shooting star presses you will ever see. The height, the distance, the impact. I was speechless, and I was trying to call this, and we both... We're looking at each other after the match and just like, what did we just see here?
I have never live seen somebody do a shooting star press. And seeing one live, my goodness, it is as scary and as magnificent and as mind-blowing as they describe it. I see it on TV, and you get used to seeing stuff on TV. But watching him do it, he even did it so much higher and so much further out in the distance. I gotta admit, we were speechless. I didn't know what to say anymore. I was just basically, Mike.
Honestly, folks, when I saw it, it looked like time was standing still. How smooth it looked, and how in control he was in that match. And then he ends up getting the 1-2-3 there. Tremendous victory for those two. Going into Golden on Wednesday, Calgary on Thursday in the special Smith Hart tribute show, and then Friday Medicine Hat. It is going to be a spectacular tour with these guys.
You know what? Really worth the money tonight. I wish more people had seen the show, CWE. I'm afraid if we don't get people into these shows, CWE just might bypass Red Deer in the future because it might not be worth stopping. They're doing enough draws in Edmonton and Calgary, but fans, you're missing some tremendous wrestling tonight. I was one of the funner times I've had in a very long time watching wrestling because these guys really knew what they were doing.
Last night I mentioned it was a pay-per-view quality card. Tonight was no different, without a doubt. All right, folks, time for our highlight of the night here, and of course the special guest gets to go first.
Well, I hope I don't steal yours, but for me the highlight of the night was the women's match. Just spectacular, and I can see why Jordynne Grace is being talked a lot about right now. I mean, I had interviewed her last week, and I had mentioned to her that usually when I go into interviews, if I don't know the person, of course, I'll look them up and do a little work so that I don't feel like, hey, who are you? What do you do? Act like you know a bit about them. But I actually heard and read some interviews and some feedback before she came in about her movements in Shine at a tournament she had last week.
That was for the Nova Championship in just 3 weeks ago, the same weekend as the Mae Young Classic. Now, I personally saw those matches, and a star was born that weekend, especially on that level.
Like, the guys at PW Insider who covered it said they'd never heard of Jordynne Grace till this day, and they were wishing they would see a lot more of her because she really made that impression. So I hear this, and I'm thinking, okay, all right. And Kelly Klein, I mean, there's a reason why right now in Ring of Honor, she is the representative of Women of Honor because she does it all. She's talented, she's attractive, she's a great representative of their company. She's their full package. And tonight, to see them collide was, for me, such a great highlight because it shows why, sure, it had little flubs here and there. Sure, there were little things you can nitpick, but you can do that in any match. But what we got to see was such a great evolution still of women's wrestling.
Absolutely. I got to give you kudos on that. And yes, you did steal mine. So,
Sorry.
But that's typical for you, but that's beside the point. My other highlight of the night has to be that main event. 4 talents that, honestly, I was in awe of watching them work. And then that shooting star press at the end. I will have to say, on top of the TKO from Silas, he does it from an airplane spin, which just multiplies the intensity of that move, the way it looks. But that shooting star press, I'm sorry, I keep going back to it, but
you have to.
Well, I'm going to have to get the video from you just so I can make GIFs of it.
We're going to have to, because I don't know. We're going to investigate and see if ROH will let us use this footage. We might have to just cut up a little few pieces here and there and randomly insert them somewhere. But yeah, that shooting star press was just off the hook. It was, as the young kids are saying, it was bananas, Mike.
Absolutely. And speaking of bananas, that's going to lead me into my surprise of the night here. And this is going to go back to a guy that acts like he is bananas. And he's a bit of a frat boy, Ethan Price. From last tour to this tour, he has just stepped up his game big time. And I know you had your comments about Orion in the matchup, but regardless of who he's wrestling against, he is putting on a hell of a performance in there, without a doubt.
You would say that would be your surprise of the night?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought he would be okay, but I didn't expect him to be at the level that he was at.
My surprise of the night for me, sometimes you go in the back into the locker room and you look at guys going around, and I'm looking around and I recognize most of these guys. There is one guy I don't recognize, a big, large guy. He's laying with his head on his suitcase, just sort of laying there. And I'm thinking to myself, is this a classic slow kind of fat guy versus whatever coming up? But then this killer Kaz guy does some crazy move off the top rope that a big man should not be doing and makes it look so good. And I'm thinking to myself, that really surprised me. I would not have guessed going into this that I was going to see a man that large do some of the moves he did tonight. So he would definitely have to be the surprise for me tonight.
And that's the one thing about Canadian Wrestling Elite. They have a bunch of talent that you may not know about now, but you definitely will know about later. And the biggest example I can give you right now is Evolve superstar Jason the Gift Kincaid. And folks, I guarantee you there's at least 1, 2, or 3 guys on this roster here tonight that will be the Jason Kincaid of 2018.
I want to throw out props too to Cute Cody. he pulled off a couple of things tonight I'd never seen him do before, and that really surprised me, the high level of athleticism out of him out of nowhere. Just like, wow. I remember what just popped in my mind. At first, I was very upset that all the posters had pictures of Chase Owens on it, and I'm like, he's supposed to be coming, and then why isn't he here? But then, I've been watching him on G1. He's been wrestling every second night in Japan, so I could kind of see why he didn't want to leave the G1, even though he's not in the tournament. I could see why he didn't come up on this tour, because he is having a great show with Bullet Club right now. And there's a guy who's been on our tours quite a bit, and just watching him each tour progressing better, and then I turn on and watch him on the G1, and man, he's a legitimate Bullet Club star member with those guys.
Absolutely, and that just proves that the level of talent that is on this CWE tour. And make sure you check out their social media, CWEwrestling.ca, as well as anything on Facebook, Twitter. They're going to announce their winter tour coming up in the next week or so. They're just finalizing venues and whatnot, so...
All right, folks, Mike the Ref back here at Edmonton SPN World Headquarters. We had a little bit of a change to what was going on for the wrap-up of the show here, so I thought I'd better do a re-wrap-up here. Once again, I want to thank the legend T. James Logan for joining me here on this episode. Please check out Gutbuster TV on YouTube as well as iTunes, as their iTunes account has a lot of interviews with the stars of independent wrestling. And their independent wrestling series, as well as Gutbuster TV, are located on their YouTube page with a lot of good video with him on commentary. I know I joined commentary on this show. If you want to catch them on Twitter, they are at Gutbuster TV. Coming up on the network itself here, I just put out earlier today the... jobbing out with the Danimal Daniel Jobber, talking all things Cruiserweight and 205 Live in the WWE. Coming up tomorrow will be the Sounds of Struggle with Chris Parrish and Maniac, who, along with Sean Martins, ended up winning the Monster Pro Wrestling Tag Team Championships, now known as the Renegade Tag Team Championships, based on Alberta wrestling legend Nelson Mayer, the Renegade. But I'm sure they're going to spend half their podcast talking about that, along with anything else that comes to their quote-unquote minds, but I'll leave that there. But the CWE tour itself is continuing on. As this podcast is going out, the doors are just opening up to Golden, BC, their first venture into BC with the Canadian Wrestling Elite Tour. Following that, they have... stops in Calgary on Thursday the 10th at the Marlborough Community Center. That is going to be a very special Smith Hart tribute show where they honor the memory of legendary member of the Hart family, Smith Hart. Nikita Koloff is going to be there as well with a Q&A during intermission. You're not going to want to miss that. And then on Friday in Medicine Hat, the CWE tour continues on there as well. The tour continues on, I believe, until the 20th or the 21st. For more details, check out CWE Canada on Twitter, or else check out their Facebook. I do believe they have Instagram as well, or their website, CWE Wrestling. It's a simple Google search, folks, if you need it. But the main reason for this rewrite here, coming up in the next couple weeks, we are going to have a special... I guess I'm going to have to call it a table for five with members of the CWE roster, including promoter Danny Duggan, the CWE champion Tyler Colton, ROH superstar Silas Young, and the CWE junior unified heavyweight champion Tornado Tony Kazina, all sat down with the legend T. James Logan. And folks, you want a shoot interview on Behind the Business? This does give a little taste on what traveling on the road with Canadian Wrestling Elite, as well as his thoughts on the wrestling business itself, is all about here. So, But our next edition of Quick Calls is going to be coming from the Abbey Master Builders Center in Blackfalds with the Canadian Wrestling Coalition and their King of the Mountain show, including a ladder match for the CWC championship with Chris Parrish defending against Jack Pride, and then also a gauntlet elimination match for their brand new Alberta championship. There's that going to be on there, as well as don't forget to check out, if you want to know something about the Canadian Wrestling Coalition, check out the Edmonton Sports Podcast Network YouTube page, as we do have CWC Evolution there, our running series covering the shows of the Canadian Wrestling Coalition. But that's going to wrap it up here, folks. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to our show. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. I am Mike the Ref on Twitter, as well as Mike the Ref EDM on Instagram. I try to use it when I can. Any comments or information you want to pass on to us, the email is theblowncallshow@gmail.com. And once again, I want to thank the legend T. James Logan for joining me here. And folks, just remember, if you're going to make a good call, make a quick call. And this has been Quick Calls, covering the Canadian Wrestling Elite Nightmare on Elite Street Tour from the Springbrook Multiplex in Springbrook, Alberta, here on the Edmonton Sports Podcast Network.
This has been Quick Calls with Mike the Ref on the Edmonton Sports Podcast Network. Contact us on Facebook or check out edmontonspn.podbean.com.